say your name after I say your district number. We'll use that as our roll call. District 1?
Yeah, John Burns, present.
District 2?
Aloha, Justin Pequeño, District 2.
District 4? John? I don't see him on yet. District 5?
Yes, Melissa Cardwell, present.
District 6? See Lee? Don't see Lee yet. District 7? Don't see Lee yet. District 8?
Rick Gaffney, District 8.
And District 9 is me, Georgine Adams. So I declare us to have quorum and start the meeting at 9:06 on my computer. And hopefully the others will join us shortly. First agenda item is to adopt our minutes. Anyone make a motion?
So moved.
That was Rick,
Yes.
Gaffney, and second?
I second.
Okay, Melissa. Were there any corrections or discussion about the minutes?
I would no corrections, but I wanted to say that the minutes were spectacular. Thank you, Peter, for your hard work on that. It's noted and appreciated.
Yes, indeed. That was a major bunch of conversation we had last time, and you did well going through that recording. Must have been fun.
Thank you. I'll put all those positive comments in the minutes as well. Thank you.
So can I have a vote? Everyone say aye.
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 Aye for me. Any nays? No, I think that was everybody. All right, the minutes are approved. On to a statement from the chair. Couple of announcements. We have a new appointee for District 2 that should get approved at the April council meeting, if I'm right about that, Tim. Elise Robinson from Hilo. She's very active, has been with the Zonta organization, Yay Women. And most importantly, she's an economist. Yay, we are going to have somebody who really can help us with the challenge on funding that is never ending here. So hopefully, if she doesn't make it to this meeting, we will see her at the next meeting. It's rumored, but I haven't gotten a name yet. The District 3 has somebody in mind. Whether or not that'll happen, we'll see. And last but not least, I see her name on the screen. Malia Hall is our new corporate counsel assigned to the EMC. And Malia, maybe, oh, hi, is that you? Maybe you could give us a little bit of your background. So to introduce yourself.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I have been with the county about 5 years. I've had probably that many departments as well. So I'm excited to be with DM and learn all about what you guys do and help you guide you guys however you need. So glad to be here. Nice to meet everybody virtually.
Thank you.
Already, I've seen him before at the Cost of Government.
And I see Lee McIntosh has joined us. So we'll note that. Now, I wanted to just briefly talk about today. Today, I figure is going to be Ramsey Day. I saw him sneaking behind Peter, so he is on the call. We spent a fair amount of time last time talking about what each of our and the EMC's priorities and goals are, but for sure we need to hear from Ramsey, what he's up to. Boy, the guy is busy and he's charging ahead, and we need to make sure we keep up with him and provide the guidance that we need. I'm gonna try to keep us fairly tight on the agenda and may wind up suggesting people come back the next meeting or a meeting or two away to follow up on some of the discussions we are no doubt going to continue as we go through here. So hopefully you won't feel like I'm pulling your plug or muting you intentionally. It's more just I want to hear from Ramsey. I think it's really important for us to know where he's coming from. And I see we also have Tim Richards and his wonderfully named Raw Wims, whatever you pronounce your crazy committee that does everything, but I haven't figured out what you don't cover, Tim. So there'll be plenty of opportunity to chime in on issues. One of the things I'm going to try, and we'll see if it works, last time in the minutes, if you need to refer to them, we identified each of us some priorities that we wanted to be leads on and do some work outside of the EMC to collate issues and bring agenda items to the committee. Not to do any decision-making offline, but to bring it in an organized fashion so we could get through some of these key areas. And so what I'd like now is a really brief description of any progress or any activities that you've done since the last meeting, just to bring us up to date. And it's perfectly fine if you haven't had a chance to do what you wanted to do yet. This is just more keep track of where we are. So I'll start off as the example of how to be brief. The integrated solid waste management plan is my thing since I was on the solid waste advisory committee.
You're out of order.
I'm sorry?
You're out of order, ma'am. You're supposed to be taking public statements before moving to.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I had a Post-it note on my agenda and got over it. So thank you, Sandra. Keep me on my toes.
Thank you.
So sorry about that. Yes, public statements. We do want to hear from the public. It's really critical. And we have, I think, we have testimony, written testimony, and I assume, Sandra, you'd also like to make public comments on a particular agenda item.
Yes, Chair. And also I have Jerry Warren is here, and he would like to give testimony on agenda item 5A as well.
5A, and you want to do 5A?
Yes, mine is the wastewater.
Okay.
6.
6A. 6 in general.
All of 6.
Okay. Is there any other desire from the public to give testimony at this time? I note that Councilman Honokaa Inaba is also listening in, and thank you. We get 2 council members. That's great. And I'm reading some chats here. So if there are no other members of the public that wish to speak, would Sandra Demerol like to go first?
I think Jerry would like to go first, please.
Okay, Jerry's fine. That's Jerome Warren. Please
I'm
go
Jerome
ahead.
Warren in Na'alehu. Agenda item 5A, priorities. Commissioner McIntosh is the lead commissioner for the priorities for our Na'alehu sewer project. The county council heard my recommendations on March 16th. The director and department's wastewater staff were at the meeting to give council members a briefing on the environmental management's plans. That's for the whole department's plans for island everything. Anyhow, my testimony told the council to not blame the EPA for the Na'alehu sewer project's oversized plans. I also said that this project needs an audit. I am also talking with the EPA. Back in 1988, the sewer plant for Hilo was overbuilt. There's a pattern of building too big. Mahalo.
I think Jerry's done. Hello, would you like me to begin? Oh, no.
Regina, I think you're muted.
That helps. Yes, I'm sorry. Very much. Yes, Strome's done, and now we'll have Sandra Demerol.
Let me begin by commenting on how good your sound is today, because we can hear you loud and clear, and this is really a real joy when we're on a telephone to be able to hear well. So thank you very much to whoever's your technician in charge of sound, because you're doing a very good job, so thank you. With that, I'll say aloha, and thank you, commission members. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to address my long-standing concern. I must say I'm extremely disappointed about the way Director Mansour has ignored the concern expressed by our Ka'u Commissioner Lee McIntosh and totally left the Ka'u LCC closure project off his March Director's report. After all, in his February report, the Commission was told the Na'alehu draft EA would be published this month, but it wasn't. This is not a technical matter, so aren't we owed an explanation? And aren't Commissioner McIntosh's concerns worthy of monthly inclusion on the Director's report? The Commission and the public rely on the Director to provide ongoing transparencies on these $108,550,000 projects to remove 246 homes from the county-owned gang cesspools. Please ask the Director to continue monthly reports on these expensive projects so Commissioner McIntosh and indeed all of us can stay informed. Again, thank you so much for your allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Demerol. And apologies for muting too much. And I have to say, from a sound basis, my husband says I yell when I do Zoom meetings and whatnot. So that's why the sound is so good. I talk too loud. So is there anyone else from public that would like to make comment? Then okay, we'll move to where I jumped ahead before. And that is to unfinished business and the different priority issues. And I may wind up addressing one of your comments, Ms. Demerol. From my part, as I was saying, I'm very interested in the integrated solid waste management plan. Should be hopefully approved at the council in April. And one of my continuing efforts will be make sure we implement the plan. The other was to try to have the director to take a focus of water resource management as opposed to wastewater management. Same thing applies to solid waste as well, thinking of it more as resource management. And he is indeed taking that attitude, and I very much appreciate it, and I'll be keeping tabs on it. The last item that I did something with was the integrated, or whether the sustainable summit that the mayor held earlier this month. And it was 2 days and intense, inspiring, and emphasized how much we need to think from an integrated system standpoint. It can't just be individual isolated projects. You know, it's great to pilot things and go there, but we need to do some overall planning, which again is a theme that I hear from Ramsey Mansour, that we need overall plans on where we want to go in the future. So on specifics, I still need to continue doing follow-up on that. Commissioner Burns, have you anything to report?
I've just been going through the available online information for transfer stations. Just as a reminder, the item I was planning to address is just the the details pertaining as to when and where transfer stations are open, what type of items are being accepted for waste, and what those limitations are. But I'm definitely going to have to do as I mentioned last time, which is get feedback from the actual department, because there is a lack of detailed information pertaining as to why there are exact restrictions to hours, whether that's union guidelines for them having to be staffed or how many people have to be on staff at a time. Those kinds of nuanced details, as I expected, aren't easily publicly available. That's all I got for now.
Okay, well, I certainly encourage you to contact, I'm going to mess his name up, Greg Goodell. And on the recycling side, it's George Hedesco. I think they're both very responsive. If you contact them for information, they can help you out there. I also need to acknowledge that Dee Fulton showed up, and that's great. Next up, we have Melissa Cardwell.
Hi. So I think what I'll be as brief as possible, but I do have a lot of information I want to share with all of you. So I think what would probably be best for me to do is just email what I've found, and you can all have the time to read over. But so in a nutshell, sorry, let me just go back to. So the thing I'm working on is supporting identification of barriers and solutions with stakeholders when it comes to supporting efforts of an island-wide residential food waste composting, and then also piloting a scalable, safe, and cost-effective process to collect, convert food waste, et cetera, et cetera. So I've been in touch with, I had a meeting with Chantal Chung, Evan Lamb, and Michael Piron, and we had a really informative discussion. Chantal is an incredible resource. She just has so much information, and and I also met with Monica Stone. I had a talk with Monica Stone, who is part of this composting consortium. There's a group of people, Chantal, Evan, Michael, Monica, and a bunch of other people have gotten together, and they've created this composting consortium to basically put together we have all the resources. It's just a matter of organization. And so a couple of the big barriers is the permitting process. The permitting process to legally have a composting facility is it's insane. I actually have an example here. There's a woman, Jennifer Milholland. She's from Kokua Hawai'i Foundation on Oahu. She filled out the permitting application. It took her 8 months, and it ended up being over 200 pages long. And this was just so that they could offer composting services at their events and introduce programs into schools. And so the problem is that if somebody wants to compost on a small scale, they're basically being held to the same standards that a mega composting facility would have. And so it doesn't really make any sense, that somebody wanting to compost on a small scale would have to adhere to the same standards. And so what Monica Stone told me is that the Department of Health they're very understaffed, and they don't have enough resources to deal with this the stuff that's coming down the pipe. We have one DOH person for the east side and we have one DOH person for the west side when it comes to this. And that's just simply not enough. That's just that they're totally overwhelmed. So this is one of the issues. Department of Health needs more resources. They need more funding. There's so much more. But that's one of the big things. The other one big thing I want to just say right now is that we need more data. We really, really need data. Rebecca Villegas's District 7. So I guess there's something called, and Tim, you could correct me if I'm wrong here, but I guess there's something called a flush fund that each council member has. It's an amount of money that they can devote to a specific project. So Rebecca took some of that money and they did what's called a waste mapping. And so they created a list of 8 questions that they gave to 21 different businesses. And a couple of the questions were, what type of waste does your business primarily produce? What do you do with your organics? Those are just 2 of the 8 questions. And so by collecting this information, they were able to determine where the waste was coming from and where the waste is going. And so, in talking with Chantal and talking with Michael and talking with Monica and talking with all of these people that are very impassioned and very devoted to this work, every single one of them kept saying, we need data, we need data. And because there's this argument that there isn't enough food waste on this island to warrant having composting facilities, and that's simply not true. There's one farm in Kona that that contacted Chantal and asked if she could compost 10 million pounds of cherry pulp from the coffee. It was a coffee farm. So that's just one farm. We have, tons of farms on this island that need some of their material to be composted. So again, it comes back to data. And so what I would like to propose, since I'm a one-woman working group right now, is that each district does the same thing, does a waste mapping and figures out, where the waste is coming from and where it's going. And that will give us some data to work with. So this would require, talking to the council members, finding out if this is something they would be willing to do. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and I'll share the rest of it with all of you in an email.
That's really great, Melissa. I think it would be good to pull together some proposals and bring it to the group for a resolution or a motion. We can write up supporting letters, etc. It's just, give us something concrete to work off of. And I know in my past life, I've done a little bit of that, and so I can offer to help as well.
Chair,
Can I just
may I
ask
make
you,
a
would it
comment?
Oh, Tim Richards would like to comment.
Yeah, Melissa, outstanding. And what you're referring to is what's called contingency relief funds, that because of the budget constraints for this coming year, that has been zeroed out. However, with the new American Rescue Act, we may see some funding a little bit there. I do like the concept. We have to see what we can do to funding. And I apologize, I have to step off this meeting. But Melissa, contact me, contact my office. Dot is on this call now. And let's have a chat about this one, if that's okay with you, Georgine. That'll work.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thanks so much, everyone. Sorry, I got to
Thank
get to another meeting. Take care.
Good.
Thank you for being here. Georgine, can I just ask you, I want to ask you quickly, as far as putting together a proposal goes, would it be best to email you some ideas or proposals that I have in mind?
I think yes, you can email me first, and then if once we figure out how we want to flesh it out and organize it, I can send it to Peter and he can distribute to the whole commission. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Georgia, this is Ramsey. Melissa, just so we don't have to kind of concentrate on the timing, work with George. Maybe there's some of that information already exists within the department. So rather than spinning the wheel, I would imagine they did a waste characterization. So they probably got a handle on it. I'll be surprised if they don't. So maybe when I get a hold of George, find out what information they have. So at least it may save you some time and effort. Then once you
Hmm.
find out what information you're missing, then you could target that one. Just to save you some
Okay.
time.
Okay, thank you. Efficiency is always appreciated.
And that'll be some of the comments I can offer from the work with SWAC that I've done. Is that it? I'll cut you off. Commissioner Fulton.
Unmute. There we go. Unmuted. Well, so far I'm a one-person work group, although it seems like a lot of work's being handled by folks already. Cindy Punahole and Rick Gaffney have been the lead folks on the Kahaluu Sewer Improvement District. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any activity that I'm aware of on that since our last meeting. And the other issue, the main issue, it's another wastewater issue, is the state of the sewer system on Ali'i Drive. That's really all I have to report.
That's perfectly fine. There is lots of stuff already going on, and appreciate you keeping your eye out, and certainly to coordinate with Rick Gaffney as well. Speaking of, you're next on the list, Rick. Rick Gaffney.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My focus is the KLKA wastewater treatment plant and bringing it up to making it a water resources recycling plant, which is what it was always designed to be, but it seemed to get diverted to other options, and the current situation with the dumping of 1.8 million gallons per day of treated wastewater into a sump needs to stop. So one of the initiatives that I brought forward based on the need for a destination for the recycled water was to seek a new commission that would include a variety of different state and county agencies working together toward a solution, the solution being moving the R1 water from Kealakekee wastewater treatment plant to the closest area where state agricultural leases exist, which is the Keaholii Ag Park at the bottom of Kona Palisades, the bottom of Kaiminani. I think I've explained before, there are multiple additional acreages adjacent to that ag park, which are already zoned for agriculture. And if less expensive water was available, it would make those areas much more functional for expanding the agriculture in that ag park, as has always been the plan. In order to do that, I reached out to the head of the ag committee in the Senate, Senator Mike Gabbard, and between us we created legislation, actually a resolution, which has moved forward in the Senate. It's SCR 46. It's now Senate Draft 1, and it has passed all the committees in the Senate and is ready to cross over to the House. And then there's a parallel bill that was introduced by Representative Nicole Lowen, who is from the district where the wastewater treatment plant is. And that's been combined with another resolution, HR 26/HCR 33, has moved through one committee in the House and is waiting to be heard in the Finance Committee. So that's the current legislative side of this. There hasn't been a lot of activity around these resolutions. However, the Department of Agriculture did say that they didn't have the time or the money to get involved with participation, which didn't deter the senators at all. 2 senators from the Big Island are on the Agriculture Committee, and they voted unanimously to move this bill forward. So they essentially ignored the testimony from the Department of Agriculture, which seemed to be basically, as in my read, it was a complete cop-out by the department, basically ignoring the need for additional agricultural lands to be made available. So that's it so far. I don't know whether it's going to move forward. Senator Gabbard has been fairly aggressive at making sure that the bill moves, and I'm hoping that the Finance Committee picks it up in the House. And if it passes, then there'll be a new committee made up of every agency in the state and county government that is involved with looking at the opportunities that are presented by the agricultural zone, which is adjacent to Nelha, which is effectively another form of agriculture. And this committee will include the Department of Transportation, which has to put the sewer lines underneath the highway and complete the sewer line from Kealakekee Parkway to the wastewater treatment plant, and then also produce the return lines that are necessary. Now, one other thing has happened that's interesting with regard to sewage. The Department of Land and Natural Resources has recently announced that they're going to build their center for West Hawaii, basically a base yard and a building to house the state parks, Department of Land and Natural Resources, Division of Aquatic Resources, and other agencies. And their intention is to do that on the bottom of Kaiminani, immediately adjacent to the ag park. That raised the issue of what are they going to do with their sewage, and their EA stated that they were going to connect to the sewage line that runs along the Queen Ka'ahumanu Highway. No such thing exists. So that was pointed out to them. And I also pointed out to them that there is a sewage treatment plant with capacity at the airport, which is one of the reasons for the resolution that we introduced, is to get the Department of Transportation talking to the DLNR, talking to DBED, talking to everybody, every other agency that is involved with sewage. So I'm hoping at this point that DLNR will do the right thing rather than what they're planning to do, which is put in a septic system, that they'll do the right thing and make a connection to the Department of Transportation's sewage treatment plant at the airport. So I'm sorry that wasn't brief, Georgine, but that's what I've been doing.
Life is not brief, and you've been very, very busy, Rick. It's the question to think about as far as the EMC. What can we do? What should we do? This is that cross-cutting integration that is a struggle for any individual group. We have a charter that's DEM and council. And so where's our function? Think through that and present any proposals you might have for what help the EMC can be.
Well, one specific thing right now would be anyone who's interested and willing to reach out to the legislature. Now's the time to reach out to the Finance Committee in the House and ask them to hear HR 26/HCR 33, because that'll breathe life into this process. So that's an immediate function that's necessary. And yeah, so, but
Rick, can you email us that information, that specific bill, and then also, do you have the contact information? Who would we email about that?
yes, I will.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Gaffney. Oh, I got all these. Sorry about that. Commissioner McIntosh.
I listened to the director's report last night that he gave to, or presentation that he gave to the county council and recently, and he briefly touched on that the original plans for the Nalehu, maybe Nalehu and Pahala, that the county couldn't pursue those plans because they made an agreement with the EPA and they did not meet the requirements for that. Maybe he can expound on that some more, since supposedly the EPA approved them in the beginning. So that's about as far as I've gotten in new information.
Okay, and I believe that we can expect Ramsey in the director's report to address some, I believe, recent conversations he's had with EPA. So hopefully we can get some word on that. John Olson, have you joined us? I guess not. And Commissioner Pequeño?
I well, I refrained from doing too much into it. I wanted to see how things went with getting Elise on board, and now that I know that she's set for confirmation with the council in their April meeting, I'm looking forward to connecting with her.
Great. Great, and we do have a related topic on our agenda, so I think we can also address that. So thank you very much. That's the kind of just keeping up to date with what's going on, and if anybody wants to join with another group, let me know so that we can keep track of that. But otherwise, it's, you know, looking to you to come up with things to come to the EMC with for action, and to agendize whatever issues you think are worthy of our consideration. Next is looking at previous action items from the last meeting. One, I guess I need to ask Sandra and Jerry, did you get a mailed hard copy of our agenda and materials? You guys still on?
Yes, Jerry received it. Thank you very much.
Okay. And again, apologies for, you know, during the transition that we didn't get that covered last time. And I understand it's important, and just in general, how to deal with providing hard copy information in these crazy times when the libraries aren't open. So I guess I kind of voiced that one onto Peter Sir to figure out how do we get information out. The other item that was considered an action item from last time was streamlining the director's report. And I sent a set of recommendations to Ramsey and Peter on how to make it a little less unwieldy, and need your input on whether or not it went too far, or whether there's still some additional information or continuing information that you'd like to have. And open to that. I did myself have some concerns that did we lose too much in terms of the status and background of the wastewater treatment activities, because they're so complex and so many steps to go through. On the other hand, I didn't want to see a lot of repetition. So what I had recommended to Ramsey was put changes in there, put new things coming up, new things that have happened, rather than putting all the background in every monthly director's report. But if other people have suggestions or would really like to see that come back, speak up.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. My computer's been down, so I wasn't able to completely pour over it, but just briefly looked at it the other night, and it was condensed, which was nicer. It wasn't like 50 pages or however long it was in the past. But I found sometimes it was like it had a point, or it made a statement, but it didn't follow through. It didn't give us information about it. I have to go back to find specifics. So it was informative and easier to read, but it kind of felt like some information was left out, or maybe he was going to address it when he spoke to us. That wasn't very clear.
Okay. And if you go back and look at it and try to figure out what you'd like to see, send me an email and we'll try and work with the department on how to make that a useful tool. And if there's some standard references that we need for that historical background, maybe there's another place to put it than constantly copying it over in the director's report every month. I don't know, maybe Peter and I need to come up with some magic drop boxes or files that we can go refer to elsewhere. Any other comments? Like I said, just drop some ideas where you've been frustrated. And certainly we do have the opportunity to ask Ramsey when he does his report for the kind of information you were missing, Lee. So I think I'm now going to move on to new business. And we have a guest speaker. And I'll let Rick Gaffney background on that. That's another thing that you did, and that's very good. That's the kind of thing looking for bringing speakers to the group so that we can get informed as well. So take it away, Rick Gaffney.
Well, I don't think Rick Bennett needs much introduction because he's the previous chair of the Environmental Management Commission. But I continue to work with Rick since his retirement from the commission. And his goal, like mine, is to see amongst other things, is to see the Kealakekee wastewater treatment plant be turned into a recycling enterprise. And Rick is a student of environmental management and also has a PhD in actually, I don't even know what your PhD is in, Rick. You can describe that. But bottom line is that he is constantly aware of new information that's really valuable to us. And Rick wants to make a presentation on less expensive options for improving the quality of water up to R1 at the Kealakekee wastewater treatment plant. So, Dr. Rick Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Gaffney, Rick Gaffney. I appreciate that. And welcome, commissioners. Good to see you all again. I'm going to give you about a 15-minute overview of two separate presentations that I put together. And I will send you a link. These presentations are now on YouTube. So if you're interested in getting more detail on these presentations, please go to those YouTube clips. So am I sharing the screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
Looks like it's starting.
Okay, I think we're sharing. Is that right?
Yep.
Yep.
You got it.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about some practical wastewater treatment options. And this is based upon a plethora of data from around the world that for some reason has been escaping the state of Hawaii. And I want to give credit to the waterkeepers who have put so much work into this, both the Hilo Bay waterkeeper and then the group I work with in Kona, since I am the Kona Coast waterkeeper. So these are practical options. But first, let me spend a moment talking about some definitions. The state of Hawaii, through its Department of Health, defines classes of wastewater with reference to its disinfection status. And so here we're talking about R1 water. Why R1 water? Because it has virtually no restriction on how it can be used. And so this is a process to fundamentally remove significant threats from microbial pathogens. Oh, and by the way, my PhD is in environmental microbiology, and I've been working in this area for over 40 years. It is disinfected, it is not sterilized. First and foremost, the water has to be filtered because filtration does take out a lot of organisms. And if you see the chart below there, the graph below, we're not working here. There we go. So it needs to get to a turbidity standard of 2. And that can be done by a number of techniques, simplest of which is sand filtration. And once you have produced R1 water, it is suitable for all irrigation usages, including fresh vegetables like this lettuce field somewhere in the Google image stratosphere. So let me turn my attention now to using the sun to disinfect wastewater. And I show a little graphic here of Maui, who captured the sun to bring fire to the Hawaiian people. We are using the sun, and let me illustrate. The raw sewage comes into pond number 1. The fecal coliform count, which is a very general, nondescript measure of organisms that may be associated with feces. And the raw counts there can be as high as 10 to the 4th, 10,000, or 10 to the 5th, 100,000. And then it moves through these ponds over a series of months and weeks. The water is heavily aerated, and so it's stirred. And to make a long story short, by the time it gets to pond 5, given some recent data that the director shared with me, the fecal coliform counts are down to 105. The solar exposure here is very significant. The oxidation exposure is very significant. But 105 is a long way from 2.2. And so what can we do to get it down to 2.2? Well, we don't have to look too far away. Over at the Nelha facility, there is acres upon acres of these solar ponds that are used to grow algae. They're relatively shallow. They are kept moving with these paddle wheels. And in countries other than the United States, they're using this type of technology to disinfect wastewater. Fairly common in the Mediterranean. I've had friends say this is a common feature in Israel. And the technology is fairly simple. Heretofore, we have talked about disinfecting wastewater with hard engineered systems using a lot of electricity to run ultraviolet lights in clarified water. And it was estimated some months ago that this system cost around $76 million. And $76 million to treat 1.8 million gallons a day of water just doesn't make a lot of sense. Even if we grow to 5 MGD, it's still a very expensive proposition. The National Renewable Energy Lab has looked at the cost of building these raceways for propagations of various types of algae and things. And they're relatively inexpensive to build. For example, if you had a 10-acre facility at $42,000 an acre, you'd have an investment of $420,000 for 10 acres of solar ponds. and that would, I haven't done the math, but it would more than likely be adequate capacity for 1.8 MGD and probably for 5 MGD. It all depends on the holding time. And so this can be explored. I don't have all the details on it. Now, how sunny is it at Kalakahe? We all have this sense that it's a very sunny place, and indeed it is. The state of Hawaii has solar radiation maps, and if you look at the graph over here to the left, it's a very sunny place. And during what we call the solar day, from about 10 to 3, that's when most of the solar energy is occurring. And so that's a typical day. Over here, we have what's happening during the year. And you can see that month by month, it's pretty steady until you get into the winter months. And this is a slight drop off due to the clouds like we've had recently. On a daily basis, the solar energy looks like this. And this is captured by a device called the Tempest Weather Station. I have one at my house. We're hoping to get more along the Kona coast so we can estimate how well the sun is disinfecting our ocean water for recreation safety. But you can see on this graph that during the solar day, it's up and down. And this is from Kukio on March 2nd this year. And so this is some cloud effect. Now, is this enough solar energy? Probably, because what we do is using some very eloquent mathematics, we can calculate the area under the curve. And so it's the accumulation of all this solar energy that does the disinfection. And so you don't have to have a perfect day to accumulate enough energy. So are we confident that sunlight inactivates pathogens? Yes, I am. This particular review was done on the topic by over a dozen international scientists. And you'll notice that I've circled Dr. Alexandria Boehm. Professor Boehm is at Stanford University. In my view, she is probably the preeminent authority of microbes in the environment, especially relative to human activities and wastewater. And so the science here is very, very sound. So here's an example of a small raceway out at Nelha. We thought this was unavailable and perhaps could be used for a test plot, but no, it's been purchased and so it's going to go into production. But these are called high rate ponds. And in the paper by Boehm et al., they state this is a proven design. High levels of sunlight mediated disinfection occur. And this is what this looks like. So we take the energy and we do some conversions and we convert it into joules, which is a form of energy. And it takes around 20 megajoules, 20 million joules to do really good disinfection. So this is seawater that has been inoculated with sewage, and they measured the decline in bacteria up until when it got dark. And then through the night, there's actually a little bit of residual activity that goes on. And then the next day you hit 20 joules, and now we're down around 10 to the 1, which is where we need to be. So it turns out that in a day or two of Kona sun, we're going to get the kill rate we need to get down to a consistent R1 level of 2.2. So that's my story on solar disinfection. I want to turn the topic now to talk about some cost-effective options for water reuse. All over the country and all over the world, the modular membrane bioreacting systems are being used. There are, you should go on the internet, there's tens of companies, international companies, that will make these modules available for small scale and large scale because they are scalable. And so it's just a matter of bringing in additional units as you grow. This creates some advantages for distributing cost over time rather than plunking down millions of dollars at one time to build up for the future that may or may not come. So simply what these systems do is bring in the raw wastewater. It's graded to remove the debris and the garbage. And then it's mixed and pumped over into the first tank. And that first tank is anaerobic. And so it will gas off nitrogen gas to the extent that you want, depending upon how much recycling you do between the two tanks. Then in the second tank is aerated, and bacteria grow, and they do a lot of processing of wastes. And then that sludge material that comes off of this is high in phosphorus. Our soils on this island are phosphorus deficient. I'm an avocado grower. I need to buy phosphorus. We can take that phosphorus and make it an additive to compost, and something that is worth looking into. And then here is the membrane filtration system. This is almost an ultrafiltration, but not quite. But it's capable of filtering out all significant pathogens. And these filters can be reused and reused and reused and backflush. There's systems for cleaning them. And then the water ultimately goes to the tank where now R1 water is available for reuse. So let me look now at briefly some advantages for Hawaii Island. A modular system membrane bioreactor can be installed at Kealakekee quickly and relatively inexpensively to produce R1 water if we choose not to go the solar route. In Naʻalehu, modular systems can be used to treat the waste from the homes that are going onto the gang cesspools. It is my view that if you're going to do that, you should do the entire community. And with the membrane bioreactors, you don't need waste treatment ponds, which I think would be quite popular concept in Naʻalehu. Similarly, in Pahala, the membrane bioreactor modules can be installed, and then right across the highway is extensive acres of macadamia nuts that could use the water. In addition, over here in Pahala, they're starting to grow coffee, and they could also use the water to augment years that are a little drier than this one. And the prognostications are that dryness and drought is in our future. In Hilo, the wastewater treatment plant is in serious disrepair. The ocean outfall of the treated wastewater is not meeting discharge requirements. And again, the membrane bioreactor could be a quick fix to the situation there. And then rather than bring pipelines from the hills to the treatment plant, other modular treatment plants in Hilo could be located in other facilities. The challenge in Hilo is going to be what to do with the R1 water because there's so much rainfall. And so it may just become a very, very high quality discharge under discharge permits. Now here's something a lot of you probably aren't aware of. There's a small wastewater treatment plant in Honokaa. And right here is a series of injection wells, literally hundreds of feet from the coast. So they are allowing secondarily treated, non-disinfected wastewater to migrate to groundwater, which ultimately moves into the sea. This is probably not lawful given the Supreme Court decision in Maui. So we can protect the ocean, we can close cesspits, we can fix the wastewater treatment plants, and importantly, we can create an irrigation economy Now that's a strange concept for Hawaii because Hawaii is mostly dry land. But given what we have seen in other states and other countries, when you make this water available, it does in fact create an irrigation economy. This water has value, and there's an opportunity to recoup that value, even to the extent that the value of the R1 water could help pay for the cost of waste treatment. That would be a first. So in conclusion, some pretty critical economic considerations. Installing photovoltaic electric systems with the MBR installation, you can capitalize on energy savings performance contracts. These modules can be leased as opposed to purchased outright. And the operation of these systems, which requires fairly sophisticated technicians, the operations can also be contracted. There's opportunities to use enterprise zone funding to install these modules all over the island. And then point 4 is this: by taking water to R1, so there are no constraints on its use, adds value to the water. I am very concerned that if we start promoting R2 water and have to deal with the regulatory constraints, that we will further taint people's fear of reclaimed water. And so in order to address those fears, we need to start with the highest quality water first. In my experience, where I have worked with communities in California, it took many, many years to gain confidence. And eventually farmers who said no way are now bidding for the water as California experiences increasing drought. And then lastly, Congress is considering 2 bills that have been tentatively valued at $3 trillion for infrastructure improvement. We need to be shovel ready if we're going to get that money and use it. And I'm confident that Hawaii will get its share, and to do cost-effective treatments that produce revenue, that recycle resources, is very important to our future. And so that's my story, and I will send Peter the links to the full presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Bennett. That was really informative and opened some interesting options that I'd like to get feedback from Director Mansour on. But first, are there any questions, short questions, because we're running off time here, for Dr. Bennett?
I have a quick question. I want to say I really appreciate that presentation as well, Dr. Bennett. It was super informative and really helpful in kind of understanding the whole situation even further. I guess my question is, are there any disadvantages to this, to what you presented, that you've come across? Because it looks brilliant to me, but I'm just curious, are there any cons to it?
Well, the solar disinfection of water is a proven technology. They're in effect using that system at Nelha every day to produce value-added algae products. And Nelha has actually told me that they will help the county with design if they choose to go that direction. The membrane bioreactor modules require a fair degree of sophistication. You can't just turn them on and walk away. But the beauty is they have been completely instrumented. And so if I was a plant operator, I could sit at my computer, I could be on the mainland, and I could be watching the performance of these MBRs remotely. And the level of control that exists now compared to old style treatment plants is very, very high. But it's going to require a skill set. And there's several ways to approach that in Hawaii County. One is to train people up. Another one is to simply hire the expertise.
Yeah, Rick, I was just going to make a
Thank you.
comment. Thank you for the presentation. That was great. I just wanted to make a point to mention it is also important, though, when you talk about available solar irradiance for disinfection, not all bands of the solar spectrum disinfect. So it's the actual rates of disinfection available are more dependent on the ultraviolet wavelengths than like photosynthetically available radiation, as an example. So to say that just simple area under the curve can be a rate for disinfectant capacity in a day is slightly oversimplified. The actual rates are going to really depend on quantifying the ultraviolet spectrum that whatever site you choose to be disinfected receives.
Good point, John. In my longer presentation, I talk about UVA and UVB, and both have a role.
Anyone else? I definitely send out the YouTubes, Peter, and so that we can follow up and get some more information as needed. But if I can, I'd like to move us along to our next new business topic. Thank you again, Dr. Bennett.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The second item, 6B, was we hear that Hilo is a disaster area at the wastewater treatment plant, and that a couple of council members have managed to get tours, and Commissioner Cardwell asked whether or not we could set something up. And I think I'm going to let you, Peter, since you did the research on this, as you can read in the agenda, there are lots of hoops to go through if we as a commission want to troop around the Hilo wastewater treatment plant. Peter?
Thank you, Chair. I think I did lay out all the requirements in the agenda. The one thing I didn't mention is that the state law requires the meeting, if it is approved, to be videotaped. That's something that you might want to bring up, whether you want to have an exception or someone goes around with a camera and videotapes their whole site visit. We do have our Deputy Corporation Counsel that might can explain a little bit more about how the process works for limited meetings. Malia? Malia? You're muted. There you go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much laid out pretty well in your agenda. You guys get the vote, but I mean, usually these kind of meetings are really discouraged, I would have to say, because the public can't participate in stuff. But yeah, I mean, as Peter suggested, if there could be some sort of recording that could be made available to the public, that would be better, so that it could continue to keep that transparency, which is the intention of the Sunshine Law.
Another comment I would make is that if you manage to sit through the entire presentation that Ramsey Mansour made at the council committee meeting, he did show video of different wastewater treatment plants, including Hilo's, and that in itself was fairly informative. Personally, I'm not jazzed about going to see a wastewater treatment plant. I pretty much know how they work. But I guess it's up to the other commissions whether or not you want to get something arranged, or whether individually, one or two, it's not a meeting of the commission, but individually, could opportunity be made for visits?
So is that
Ramsey.
possible? Are we not in violation of a sunshine law if just 1 or 2 commissioners go? So that way it's not, you know, the whole commission or, you know, quorum.
Yeah, basically you have a permitted interaction of up to 2. So if there were 2 of you that wanted to go and then report back to the full commission, that is an option.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the way I feel is just to, you know, because I was the one that asked for a vote on this meeting is, you know, I've read over Stephen Holmes' information regarding the treatment plant, and you know, I could watch the video that I didn't watch the presentation that Ramsey gave, but I think there's something about going to a place in person and seeing it in person that can be more effective, and it can, I think, be a motivating factor to kind of push for change. And so that's where I'm coming from. And so if you know, if I'm the only commissioner that wants to go see this treatment plant, then you know, I can set that up myself. But if there are other commissioners that think that it's important enough to warrant, you know, a vote to have a limited meeting, then well, then I guess we need to determine that.
So keepers of Robert's rules, do we need to have a formal motion and a second and a vote? Or can we just get a sense of the commission?
Right now you can just take kind of a, actually, you know what, a formal motion would be best, and then a discussion. Sorry.
Okay, Melissa, you want to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
So motion to have a limited meeting at the Hilo wastewater treatment plant by the commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Who is that?
Justin.
Justin, okay. Discussion?
This is Commissioner McIntosh. Quite honestly, I think if the commissioners just watch the entire presentation starting at 34 minutes from the link that you sent us, it clearly shows the disrepair and he describes it, a terrible condition that all of the wastewater treatment plants are in. And quite frankly, I don't need to go there to see it. And it's just, I would think it would be more of a safety issue for us and the county to have us sitting around when it's not nearly necessary, because the director took the time to take video, clear video, to show us of the awful conditions it's in. So I myself would not want to go, and I personally would not support a limited meeting at a location like that.
Thank you, Commissioner McIntosh. Any other comments? I guess I should repeat. I too don't think it's a great idea.
I think that says a lot about the wastewater treatment plant, doesn't it?
It's pitiful. And I don't know that we need further instigation to say, yeah, we got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the others want to? Rick? Shall we have a vote? All in favor? Say aye.
Roll call, please.
I need to roll call it. Do you want me to roll call it, Peter?
Yes, roll call.
Okay, roll call. That's my list here. Commissioner Burns?
Yes.
Justin Pequeño?
Yes.
John Olson, are you back? Are you on? Still no? Melissa Cardwell?
Yes.
With a yes. Lee McIntosh?
Nay.
Dee Fulton?
Nay.
Rick Gaffney?
Nay.
And Georgine Adams is a nay. So I think the motion fails. I didn't keep count.
Okay.
But would encourage you to contact the department. And Ramsey, I'm not sure who he contacts.
Chair,
Yes,
I was the one who took some videos of the plants, and there are more that did not make it into the presentation, but I'll make them available to you and the public.
oh, thank you. If Melissa really wants to go see the Hilo wastewater treatment plant, who should she contact?
Me, and we also have the wastewater division chief on the meeting as well.
Is that okay, Melissa?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
And John, I guess you wanted to go too? And that'd be fine. Two people, two commissioners going would be fine.
Melissa, I'll just go ahead and schedule what works for you. My schedule's never good ever, so if I can make it, I'll hop in. But I
Okay.
don't try to make it around my time. Yeah, just do what works for you, and if I can, it'll be fun.
Okay.
Okay, 6C, if we can move on. This is talking about funding and requested by Commissioner Fulton that we consider enterprise fund or other funding mechanisms. And I guess the question I have for you, Commissioner Fulton, is do you want to talk about this now, or would you like to talk about it within the discussion of the director's report?
Let's save it for the director's report. I would expect perhaps that Mr. Mansour may be discussing that anyway.
Well, if that's okay, I think we will defer 6C to discussion within the director's report, which brings up Director Mansour. Are you there? He's muted. Peter, is he around?
Yeah, sorry. You got it, Peter. My computer is, I have so much technical difficulties in this computer. It's taken forever to load. I got it unmute, but it took probably a minute just to get muted or unmuted. So yeah.
Funding opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even afford fixing my computer. It's insane. So are you guys still hearing me? Because I could see the distraction
Yes.
on the screen.
We hear you. And
okay, I'm not gonna put the video because I'm afraid I may lose you because I'm getting these green lines on my screen. So probably I'll go ahead and just talk about the report and also address some of the concerns that were brought in as questions. Definitely, Melissa, is the reason we did the video because really we wanted to bring the facility to the committee because not too many people were able to tour the facilities. So I figure I brought the facilities to them. So Peter have more videos that can address, more visualization of the sites. And I think it'll be helpful. And definitely, if you guys could schedule time, just let my chief know when. Just make sure you wear the proper shoes coming to the facility, so it doesn't create any safety concerns. But yeah, definitely sometimes visualization worth so much to the decision making. So with that said, as you guys see through the presentation, the department and the county faces major concerns from a financial point of view, from a maintenance point of view, from getting things done, from just putting things back together the way it should be. It's unfortunate where we at, but definitely we have a lot of work ahead of us. The major concern that we really need to work on is an advice from you on the commission on really how to tackle this financial situation we have, because without money we cannot get things done. Unfortunately, the CIB list been making it on the list for the last 10 years, but we cannot continue the status quo. We cannot continue waiting and staying on the mercy of getting a grant or low interest rate, and our debt ratio may not fit the criteria. We have to be self-sufficient, we have to be sustainable, and we have to have financial stability so we could start doing the things that you guys bringing up. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of projects, $600 million to $1 billion worth of projects. That's not easy, because the reason we got to this point, we let it accumulate. It's unfortunate, but now we got to face it. And we're going to face it. And I look at you guys, the commission, to start giving us advice as your charter on how to navigate through that. And in talking to your communities, what's the best way that we could reach within the community to be a win-win? Definitely, there's so many ideas floating around, from enterprise fund, that make us more sustainable, to, setting certain fees. We could follow what the city and county of Honolulu done back in 2009 when they got their consent decree, because they were in our situation, unfortunate back then. And, the consent decree got them back on shape. Now financially, they're very strong, very strong. They're able to put the MPR system as a secondary treatment, but definitely not the container MPR. It's a big project because of the amount of flow they're getting. So definitely, their financial structure is very strong to get these consent decrees and administrative order of consent complied with. So that's number one priority. Without having the money, we could have the wish list of all these projects, but how are we going to get them? And you're going to get the priority project is going to kick the other non-priority project out of the picture. And that's what we're facing with. Currently, our entire budget is for $15 million. $15 million, that's zero to comparing to the CIP project. This is only covers operation costs and very minor maintenance costs. So, even if we're going to get loans and bonds on $15 million, it's not going to get us anywhere. So definitely, we in catch-22, and we need to come out of it. And we need to start thinking about what is the best way to structurally set up our finance structure to get all these projects going and running, so we could environmentally be safe, and also so we could protect the safety of our employees at the sites. So there's a lot of challenge. It'll be good to get a, go ahead, somebody.
This is Georgine. we were talking about an enterprise fund, and you included some description that Dee Fulton had found about what an enterprise fund versus a semi-autonomous agency like the water division or water supply group, just how that functionally works. It seems like one of the issues is if you have an enterprise fund, you are charging fees for all the services that you're providing. And one of the challenges here, as illustrated in Alehu and Pahala area, the people who are using those services could no way afford to pay any kind of fee that approaches what is necessary to run the kinds of facilities that we've been talking about. And one of the, call it, I think you used the word political will, one of the issues is who should pay? Should it be island-wide? Should it be just the service area for a particular facility? Or do we just go begging to anybody and everybody that we can think of to give us money through federal grants, which is also at the whim of whatever administration's in place? So it seems like one of the things maybe we could get a sense from the Environmental Management Commission is, do we think fees are the way to get enough money at least to back up some loans and bonding? And how widespread are we able to give those fees? Is there enough of a feeling on this island that everybody on this island wants all the water to be safe? Or is it, I'll pay for what I need and I'll pay the least amount of money I can get away with for what I need? Let me just build a deeper hole to put things in. Anyway, I would appreciate some comments from other commissioners.
I'd like to chime in. This is Melissa. Yes, I do think fees are an important part of the picture. You know, it was brought up at one of our meetings, I think maybe a couple of times, you know, that if we ever were to create some kind of waste collection infrastructure, you know, then we would need to charge people. And that's how it works in most places. You know, this is one of the few places where, you know, there is no money that is collected for that. And I also want to say, I think that, you know, fees is part of the picture, but there's sort of like a financial management picture that we have to look at. And I actually have a question for Ramsey. This, in part of my research, you know, this last month of looking into all this composting stuff, one of the things that I found out was that we have a current landfill waste management contract, I guess. And this contract, this waste management contract, requires that the county meets it has to produce 400 tons of material to go into the landfill every year. And if that doesn't happen, then the county is fined. And so I wanted to find out, is this in fact true? And if it is true, are we being fined? Is the county being fined for that? Because it reminds me, it's very similar to what's happening in Honolulu with the contract with Covanta, with H-Power. There was a 3-year period from 2013 to 2016 where the city of Honolulu paid out $6.2 million. So we have to look at, you know, yes, we need money coming in, but we also have to look at, is there money that's going out that is due to poor contracts, essentially, you know? And if that's the case, then we need to change that. That's systemic failure. And so I'd like to get, you know, information about that. And that's just one example. There might be other examples, other things that, you know, the county is being fined for. And so this is a systemic problem.
Yeah, just to let you know how the funding works and the money, even though you bring it up the solid waste, which is fortunately, no, we have not paid penalties, but because of confidential information with WMI contract, I cannot share much with you, but we are looking into that contract and the legality aspect of that contract. That all I could tell you for now. But that is solid waste contract, had nothing to do with the wastewater, because you cannot mix funds. Even though if you could save money in the solid waste, it has to go to that solid waste services. And that solid waste fund is really being funded by 50+% of general fund. So any money gets saved, it goes back to the general fund, and you become under the mercy where that money go. It could go to roads, it could go to police department, it could go to the fire department, and what have you. So, and that's why if we lose control, the waste management business anywhere in the world, anywhere in the state, in the country, have experienced that financial structure in some way or another. Most of these waste management departments started under public works, pretty much in everywhere in the country. And they find out, because it's a health and safety issue, they were getting second priority under public works. So they start getting the pressure from regulatory agencies and fines. So they found out themselves that we cannot sustain running a department under the mercy of other departments. So the waste management departments, they start branching out on their own, because they cannot be under the umbrella of public works, because they health and safety department, and they need to deliver right on the moment. They cannot wait to fix stuff 10 years down the road. So, and that's the reason they became a department, standalone departments. And most of the department started with a general funding. But also they found out themselves that, other department takes the money away from them, so they're not getting the priority they need. So they start becoming more enterprise fund or a special fund or autonomous board funding. And the difference between autonomous board and enterprise fund is the autonomous board, they have their own commission, their own board, their own charters, their own bylaws. The enterprise fund is still could be run under county council members, still be a county overseeing that enterprise fund. The enterprise fund is it's fee-based funding that's based on the service you provide to the people you provide. And you're right, our county here, it's not the city and county of Honolulu. We pretty much get probably 1% of their flow in the big picture. Our entire island only treats about 4.5, 5 million gallons. That's nothing. Literally, that's nothing comparing to the size of the island. So we definitely need to start connecting people to sewer. And how are we going to do that? We need, maybe instead of looking at treatment and putting the money there, we need to start looking how we could fund the infrastructure to bring the sewer collection system in an affordable way in front of people's homes so they can connect. If they connect, then our customer base goes up. If our customer base goes up, our revenue increases. So that's one way to run the business model. We could do it that way, but it's going to be costly to bring the infrastructure and trying to hook up everybody. The other way of doing it is just environmental fee. We could set up environmental fees, for sewage protection of shorelines, and have everybody pays for it, even tourism. You could attach a tax to tourism that could come just to the sewer funding to protect our pristine water shoreline. So there's so many other options. It's the will of the community, and it's the will of the political power to say, okay, definitely we need to have the system in place. We cannot continue with the status quo. Therefore, what's the best way to sorry, I got somebody's mowing the grass. So could you guys hear me? Okay, I'll continue going even though the noise in the front yard, I guess, in the business. I'm in Hilo's office today, so they decided to do that today, I guess, when I am on the east side. But anyway, so there is different structural mechanisms that we could put in place. Definitely, if you expand your customer base, you'll have more revenue. It'll be cheaper to everybody that contributing to the system because everybody's going to benefit from it. Every person lives on the island is going to benefit from these beautiful shoreline we have. So if we start collecting money to allow us to do that, then it's a win-win. Enterprise fund based on 4 million gallon per day countywide. I mean, the Hilo and Kalakea is the two biggest plan we have. Some people don't understand, how operation goes. A facility is a facility. So let's say we're running a 5 MGD plan versus a 10 MGD plan. It still is going to cost the same amount of money for operation. So because you're still dealing with the same mechanical part, you're dealing with the same infrastructure part, you're dealing with the same structure. So that also is gonna, because sometimes people say, oh, well, you got a smaller plan, you need less staff. That doesn't work that way. Because the staff still need to maintain the same type of equipment that you have for the bigger facility. It's just the flow is different. So definitely that we need to address that. So hopefully that kind of give you guys an idea of the challenges that we face. And otherwise, we really cannot continue having these outdated, broken facilities and yet hope for a miracle to happen. We need to take the leadership and we need to start setting things in place. And I need your help, guys, to navigate through that. And to me, it's if we're going to do all these projects and we're going to, convert facilities to R1 and have the Hilo plan up to speed and fix it so our staff could start walking around without the idea of falling into the wastewater, which is a scary thought. We need to get there.
So I'd like to, this is Melissa again. I'd like to know your thoughts on Dr. Bennett's presentation because, it seems like what he's proposing is way more affordable than, what was it? It was originally $76 million for the Kalaka'i wastewater treatment plan. Now it's up to 100 and something million. I think what Dr. Bennett was proposing, falls well under that. So, I mean, there's a potential solution. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess it depends how you define affordability. When you don't have the money, nothing is affordable. We didn't have the 160 million to start with. We didn't have the 76 million to start with. So affordability, it's really defined on what do you want to do and do you have the money to do it, and what are your priorities, and what is your you want to avoid getting $25,000 per day violation, or do you want to start chasing something that you don't have the money for? So the idea is it's a great presentation. Definitely we're looking at options as we speak. The solar, Dr. Bennett hit it right on. These the solar and the waves from the sun, it is beneficial to the disinfection. But once you get to the low level of disinfection, to the 105 we have, the sun become less effective in taking that to a lower level of 2.2. So because it's going to probably require more exposure. So your detention time probably would take 2 days or more. So you'll be looking at probably about 140-acre site to be able to design the raceway to allow the water, the sun to penetrate a certain depth. So the way it's designed is based on detention time, based on the velocity of there. Usually you want to have minimum velocities so the water could at least stay in there to get that 30 minutes to 2 days of exposure to the rays. And the wavelength, it makes a big difference on the treatment. And sometimes when you get a cloudy days, you lose 50% or so of the sun ray to the water. So you have challenges. Practicality, when we design things, we look at things from constructability, practicality, and operational challenges. With these type of designs, you also encourage the algae to grow. So if you have a growth of algae, that will prevent the sun from getting to the water. So you defeat the purpose. So you have to design it because wherever there is a sun and there's water, there's always going to be algae. And if it's not algae, then you're going to have duckweed that's going to grow along the entire raceway. So there's a lot of operational challenges, but that concept has been been in existence since I keep telling Dr. Bennett, since the ancient Egyptians, because that's how they used to drink their water, through using the sun to kind of kill their bacteria. And they used to design these small channels to route the water to their villages. In disadvantaged countries, they go to water streams and rivers and lakes, and they capture some of the water and they put it in plastic, recyclable water that, it's great for allowing the sun rays to get into the water. So, and definitely the sun that's what Mother Nature gave us. And it is proven science, but is it practical science? And that's what, as engineers, that's what we analyze. We analyze it from practicality, constructability, and operation. There's a lot of, the sun already doing us great. That's why we get in some of that disinfection. But yeah, I mean, the science is already proven when it comes to that.
I'd like this, Georgine. I'd like to get back up at a higher altitude on this. I think that there's still this issue of, well, we make everybody attached and using our services, and therefore we can get a lot of fees in, or kind of growing it from the bottom up, or do we look at it as, and again, kind of from the sustainability concept of, all of us, including all our visitors, have a stake and benefit from the quality of our environment, including our waterways around the ocean, as well as land contamination and litter and all this stuff. And so we all benefit from the entirety of the island and should all contribute to maintaining it. Is my philosophy. And so how do we convince people that, yeah, you may not be individually connected to this particular sewage plant, but you are enjoying the fact that everybody wants to live here because it's such a wonderful environment, and that has value and you need to pay for it. And it just seems like different directions to come from the funding concept. And I think as it ought to be that you engineers figure out how to achieve the environmental quality that we need, the cheapest, the most practical, and make it happen. And then we've got to figure out, okay, how do we fund it? Jerome had made a comment about, we've had this practice of overbuilding, buying the biggest and the best and assuming, we'll grow into it. Well, that's more, I think, an engineering challenge of how do I meet the specs and what's the cheapest long-range way to do that. And then we've got to look at, okay, what kind of money can we bring to bear? And that it is something that it's all of our kuleana. And that's a political position that we would take to the council from the Environmental Management Commission, perhaps saying, this is something the whole island needs to buy into and understand that one of the taglines for Zero Waste Group is there is no away. Away is our island. You can't throw things away. We have to manage our entire ecosystem, and that's not free. But that's my philosophy. Again, interested in others' approaches to this.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I just wanted to point out that we do have some mechanisms in place as for tourists paying for these different things. The state calls it the TAT. Unfortunately, instead of providing that money to the counties, the state, the legislature has been taking that away. And so, I mean, that does exist. And for the idea that not everyone on the island that lives here pays for these different services is not true, because anyone who owns land on the Big Island pays property taxes. And that goes to fund the county and all its services. Now, if you do have, you know, connection fees and different things like that related to services you use, that's understandable. But to pay property taxes, and then like us, we're nowhere near a treatment plant, to automatically say, okay, we want you to now start paying this separate fee on top of everything. I can tell you right now, that's not going to go over well at all, period, anywhere. No one will like that. Even if you say, well, you're protecting the environment. Well, no, because we are paying property taxes. So the idea behind property taxes is you charge what you need. And right now the county hasn't, I mean, they play favorites, you know, they carve out, okay, you can pay less because we want to encourage you, and, you know, different things like that. If we all pay a little bit, then it adds up over time to cover what we want, what we'd like to do. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, I think that the concept of building it into the property tax is on the table. I think it's something the council and Tim Richards has talked about as well, and that's one way to do it. Although not everybody owns property, certainly getting the tourist money, rightly so, would be an option. But I think your point's well taken, and a lot of it is educating people of the value of paying more. And, you know, it's kind of a pay me now, pay me later concept as well. Dee Fulton had a comment to make.
Yes, thank you, Georgine. I wanted to circle back around to the discussion of enterprise fund, if it's appropriate now. Georgine, is it appropriate to?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I'm not an expert on enterprise funds. I you know, wish I know that Steve Holmes could speak to this much more fluently than I could, but I'm just going to read a brief definition. A government's general fund is a pool of cash raised from taxes and can be spent wherever the government needs it. An enterprise fund is more specific. Enterprise fund money can only be spent on a specific purpose. And this obviously has a lot of value because in the past, when the problem hasn't been talked about, or, you know, people turn their back on the wastewater problem, it's been ignored. All right, so enterprise fund has a lot of advantages. Most of the funding comes from fees related to the fund's mission. Okay, so it's not taxes, it's fees. Further, and this is a really important advantage of enterprise funding, government don't have to rely on the fees to cover all the fund spending. We can get bonds. If necessary, a government can pay for some of the services with tax dollars. Most of the financing, however, is based on the fees or bonds backed by future fee payments. And the beauty of the bonds is that the bonds earn a favorable rating because of the structure. The fact that they're guaranteed a certain revenue stream makes those bonds more marketable and more susceptible to favorable ratings. So cheaper, that translates into cheaper funding for the county because the interest rate isn't quite so bad. Tying fees and services together through an enterprise fund has advantages. Users and the general public can see how much it costs to provide particular services and why the fees are set at a certain level. It's not always possible to balance fees and the cost of services perfectly. A fund may run in the red one year, which is a sign government needs to raise fees. If the fund turns a profit, the money carries over to operations in the next fiscal year and fees might drop. But I do think there are advantages, and I think I'm very happy to see Holika Inaba on this call because I think that this is a county council action, and I would invite anyone who knows differently to correct me if I'm wrong. So I'd like to make a motion or that we send a letter in support to the county council to move forward on doing whatever's necessary to set up enterprise funding for wastewater management.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion?
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I think I understand how it works. Essentially, it's carving out a special fund for wastewater and only used for their operations. It couldn't be taken back and put into the general fund. I guess my question is, to prevent it from skyrocketing for the fees charged, is the county able to put in money from the, I guess, infuse money from the general fund into the enterprise funding to, I guess, prop it up of sorts to help it along until we're able to build out the system to support more customers?
Or here's how Dee, Anthony, you hit it right on. I love your description. It just, you hit it right on. It's just the right description of the enterprise fund. The good thing about I've been working with enterprise funds for the last probably 30 years or so. So definitely it's a way to give you financial stability. Also, you're limited on the rate fee increase too. It depends how it's set up. You could set it up to go up within every 5-year increment by the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and you could cap it at that rate annually. So at least the cost of living keep going. The COLA will be added into that enterprise fund. The challenge with it depends how we're going to set up the enterprise fund. If it's going to be fee driven for service, then you're only going to be able to charge the people that receiving the service. So your basket of revenue is going to be smaller, but it's going to be at a higher cost to offset the capital and the O&M costs. If you to set it up based on countywide fees, then you're going to share the cost, which is going to be way lower because your customer base will be the entire county. And you could start adding tourism to it. So definitely my recommendation, also something for you guys to think about, maybe what we need to do. There's financial consultants. They do this for a living. We don't have to figure it out ourselves. They know legislations, they know the laws, they know the system as when it comes to solid waste and wastewater. Maybe we need to start hiring the right people, the consulting, do RFP and solicit a third party to come in, analyze the financial structure within the county, understand the Hawaii statutes, and they give us recommendations with options. I think this would probably be easier for anybody involved because it's you get an independent review from people that do it for a living. City and County of Hawaii done that when they established their enterprise fund. They have a financial consulting firm that came in and assisted them. When I was in California, we used HFH Consulting. They are very, U.S. and world-renowned financial consultant. That's all they do for a living. They go around, advise municipalities on establishing the proper funding for solid waste and wastewater. I think maybe it's the time to start taking it that direction rather than keep spinning our wheels trying to figure out what's the best option. Let the expert come in and tell us what's the best option and present it to our council members and anybody else's. Just food for thoughts.
I think that's a really good idea, and maybe it means perhaps modifying the motion a tad to, yes, we support the concept of enterprise funding to the council and recommend that a consultant be hired to flesh out just what that program would be.
I'm willing to retract the motion and submit a different motion supporting Director Mansour's observation. But thank you so much, Ramsey, for bringing your experience to the table, and we do want to support you. I think that's a wonderful idea to bring in financial consultants. So I would reframe the motion that we advise the council to bring in a financial consultant to consider, among other options, enterprise funding and energy saving performance contracts.
Do we have a second?
I'll withdraw my second on the first motion and second this renewed motion. And I'd also like to ask the director, Mansour, are there not available consultants with the expertise necessary at Region 9 that we can get their expertise at the federal level, probably at less cost than a private contracting firm?
I guess we could reach out to Region 9. I know because the projects that we have, we may be able to get a list of the consultants that they may recommend. But yeah, so that's something we could reach out to Region 9, because we asked them the question is, how could we get consistent even financially? Right now, my understanding with the Department of Health, EPA, they're not funding any planning or design work starting just at the beginning of the year. They told our chiefs that we're not going to be getting any funding when it comes to planning, design, and construct, and planning and design documents. So they're not going to fund any consultant that comes in for planning purpose or design purpose. So we are trying to also, that's going to create a gap in our funding, because in the past, they used to fund these. Now we're going to try to figure out, and that's why I think these financial consultants that have the know-how and they've been in the business and they've been advised so many municipalities, either worldwide or within the United States, could assist us on navigate through that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not a design or build financial request from EPA. This is talking about the appropriateness of enterprise fund, considering the size of the island, the size of the community, the size of the problem. I don't think that's a design build ask.
Yeah, they may look at it as planning. So we need, they may look at it from a planning point of view, the department planning, considering the structure. It's not a design, you're right, but it could be considered as planning.
Other discussion? I also like the concept of enterprise fund, of thinking of it, this is a business. We're in the business of providing the service of keeping our water and our land clean. And how we achieve it at the most cost-effective, practical manner, and how do we plan for, which Ramsey has many times complained about, the long-term maintenance of our operations, and not just, well, build it and cross your fingers and never look at it again. If you take a more long-term financial planning perspective on our operations, I think it's a really good discipline. Comments, are we ready to vote? Any other comments on putting together a recommendation for the council? Seeing none, I'll take a vote. I'll roll call it. I'll just go by what I see. Rick Gaffney,
Aye.
Dee Fulton,
Aye.
you voted for your motion? Lee McIntosh,
Aye.
Melissa Cardwell,
Yes.
John Burns,
Aye.
and Justin Pequeno.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So can we ask Dee, with perhaps Rick, to write up a draft of the letter of recommendation to the council?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll help.
Thanks, Rick. So that's hopefully a good step forward. Obviously, a lot of homework still to do on behalf of the council as well, of who we can bring in to help advise that. But I think that philosophy, and I guess also question again back to you, is from a philosophy of countywide support for the enterprise fund, regardless of whether or not you're specifically hooked up or putting your bag of trash in a particular location? No
Is
comment.
that for immediate discussion or discussion at a later date?
Well, within the context of the letter that we're going to be sending, maybe it's, we would want the financial consultant to look at both kinds of fee-based systems.
Yes, that, I would think that that's why we'd be employing a financial consultant, is he can, this is Commissioner McIntosh, by the way, he can look at what would be the best, present, what they're supposed to do is present, look at all the options and present each option to the rulemaking body, and then they are able to make an informed decision on what best route to take, which I think is better than us trying to figure it out and present something that maybe we might have missed something.
Right. Very good. Okay, Dee, we'll be waiting for your letter. Maybe sticking with a fund, looking back at Ramsey, your report, there were concerns on the solid waste side as well of losing some money. If you want to give brief comment on that and what again the EMC can do to help with that.
Yeah, this is also not as bad as the wastewater because we don't have the facilities that hasn't been maintained for 30 plus years. The solid waste challenges we have is really continue providing the programs because there's so much desire, rightfully so, for compost, for recyclables, for how we could get to zero waste, and achieve all these. But yet, we almost more than 50% of our department budget comes through the general fund. This year, we're going to be getting almost 27 million through the general fund. Our total budget is 37 million. And two of these contract we have are taking almost 33% of our entire budget. And we are looking right now into finding ways and renegotiating these two contracts. So at least hopefully we could reduce the financial liability just when it comes to these two contracts. Definitely, we trying to find out also this maybe also we need to do the same, kind of food for thought too. That can, the consultant also could look at getting a land use fee structure set up where you could set up $20, but I don't want to overwhelm the community with two major failing, divisions because of financial. Unfortunately, when I first came on into the job, it reminded me back in 1990 when I first was brought in by Kern County to help them going from what you guys are doing now to gate fee structure. They were having 18 landfills at no fees. People were driving from Los Angeles trying to use the solid waste facility within the Kern County because they were free. So you always get all these commercial and everybody coming in for free services. Subtitle D, Title 27 under the Clean Water Act and RCRA came about in 1993. Therefore, everybody was supposed to convert to a lined landfill. And that was true here for the state of Hawaii because it's federal mandate where EPA, kind of say everybody has to start having a lined landfill, and you start thinking, okay, that's going to add an extra cost. And Georgiana, you hit it right on. We look at it from a business point of view. And the business need to be able to generate the revenue to offset the capital costs, the construction costs, the operation costs, because you cannot really take it out of property taxes. These type of services are not intended to be collected and taken out of property tax. Right now, we get $40 in every $1,000 you guys pay on property tax. Is $40 adequate to manage the entire solid waste business when it comes to programs and comes to building new landfill cells, maintaining closure for life of these facilities, recyclable, compost, direct, all these type of waste that comes to our landfill and process it, deal with the hazardous waste. All of that costs money. $40 per every $1,000 you guys pay, it's not enough to keep the programs and to keep providing the services that everybody wanted. It's unfortunate, but we get an almost 4% of the entire general fund just comes to solid waste. So we under the mercy of general fund. We lost $2 million this year. So we have to cut back on the programs. That's the reason we cut down on the hours on the transfer stations. So we need to have a more comprehensive plan countywide when it comes to solid waste. Number one, is it efficient the way we're doing it now by having 22 transfer station, by having everybody taking their garbage into the landfill without doing the sorting, without taking the plastic, the cardboard out of the garbage bag because of convenience? Or should we start putting the collection in place, like a universal collection, where maybe the cost to operate these 22 transfer station and not benefiting from the recyclable, maybe start encouraging people to recycle by giving them the 3 containers so you change the human habit. And science tells you that sometimes you could change a human habit of how you interact and how you deliver to them. Because if you see a green container, you're going to put the grass and the green in it. And blue container, you're not going to put the plastic and cardboard into the same garbage bag that you're going to take to the transfer station because you don't want to make 3, 4, 5 trips. So if we get into the cycle of how the human interact through public educations and through evaluating the current system and be able to provide compatible services, but yet achieve more. And these are the challenges I've seen. I lived it back in 1993, as I was telling you. It's funny when we created the gate fees where everybody pays commercial, and the residential they pay like $38 at that time per ton, because usually we estimate that every household, usually they dispose of 1 ton to 1.5 ton annually. So if you put a cost per ton, let's say right now, currently, we charge in commercial about $120 a ton. So you could take that and say, okay, residential, you guys pay nothing, pretty much. It's coming out because people think, well, we pay property tax, but property tax goes to protection. It goes to the police department, the fire department, and that's the intent of these property tax. That's the reason property taxes were created. It was not to provide a service such as waste and solid waste, because that people look at it as a business because we under so many regulatory mandates from state and EPA. So if you say, okay, commercial costs you $120 a ton to pay at the landfill, if we take that cost per ton per residential and start charging annual fee of $120 per parcel for residential, then you have an equal field. Then you're going to generate revenue that's going to offset that services, and you're going to be charging the same amount of tonnage you charge others. So $120 or $200 a year, that comes to about $15 a month for residential beneficial use of that landfill. Everybody is going to generate waste. Everybody's going to have the use of the landfill. So we need to start looking at, okay, how are we going to set a fees? With the solid waste, we've been lucky because we have the admin rule. Maybe we could use the admin rule as our vehicle to set monthly or annual fees based on the tonnage that every household uses. And then you set the fees and you said, okay, maybe you could put that $120 or $200 a year on the tax bill, as a fee, assessment fee, for the purpose of using the landfill, or you could do it monthly at a $15 a month. So, and I think this is the vehicle that could get us to be more financially stronger to be able to provide to you guys the composting and get to zero waste and get the recyclable and start thinking outside the box of what we're going to do with it. But I think that will definitely assist the solid waste moving forward.
I'd like to recommend that we have a solid waste management plan coming up. Certainly funding is part of that, and that maybe at a later meeting we can go through all the different mechanisms for funding solid waste and recycling operations. Rather than, and focus the letter that we're going to be sending to the council now on wastewater, because that's the biggest pain right now. But that we would follow up with some recommendations on how we can fund a better solid waste management and preferably more a resource management approach to waste to encourage recycling and composting, et cetera. But I don't think we've got time to dive into that right now. I wanted to make sure that we addressed some things that might be time pressing. It sounds like there was a reference at number 4 under your solid waste division report that there are House bills, I don't know if they're moving or no, that's going to take away money from the glass deposit. Wasn't quite clear if that was all high five money or just for glass. It was just kind of a separate fund. And also that any general fund monies you haven't already spent, they're going to steal. In another bill, are those pressing? Are those going to be something we need to deal with?
I recommend that if you have not read them, read the bills, and that's where, you know, we look at you guys as an advisory committee on legislative matters. So we're bringing it to your attention because we want you guys to read it, get familiar with it. And if you guys recommend that we need to object to it, we need to have one big voice rather than us, the few. So some of these bills could be beneficial, some not, and that's where, you know, I want to start to directing you guys and for the attention of, as an advisory committee, you know, from a legislative point of view, these are the bills. If you guys have not read them, and maybe you could advise us next meeting what the department need to do and not to do.
Okay. Are there any commissioners that have dived deep into the various bills that were listed?
I was just looking, it's on the director's report. I was just looking at one of the bills, and it basically says that it would take the $5 million from that's collected from high fives and direct that into the general fund to be used. It says it's for unrestricted use in the operating budget. And that's because there's been a drop in the general excise tax collection for the state in the last year. So that's just one of the bills. That's House Bill 1298.
Yeah, see,
I haven't.
the high five is one of our successful program, and if they're gonna start taking money away from it, you know, it's good for you guys to dive in, and maybe we could try to save some of these programs.
So if that money were taken and put into the general fund, does that then mean that it would negatively impact the High Five program? Because how does that work?
I would imagine if it goes into the general fund, then we'll have, since it's not going to be designated and it could be spent at any way, any fashion, so we may not be controlled to that particular program. So we need to just dive into it more and brainstorm it and ask questions. So it seemed like definitely the majority have not read it yet. I recommend that maybe you guys read it in the next meeting, just kind of let's talk more about it and see the impacts and pros and cons. And I don't know the status on that bill yet, but definitely some of these legislation bills, if we don't catch it and it become a law, then we'll be mandated to do it. And then we find out later that, oh my God, why are we not doing this program anymore? So,
Right.
Well, it certainly seems like it falls within our motion that we just passed of more an enterprise fund concept of this is dedicated money generated by the people who are making something that could be recycled, and generating funds that allow us to do the recycling. So it makes 0 sense. I did note that in the language for 1299, that it was contingent on the solid waste management plan being approved. And I'm assuming that we're going to get approved. And so we wouldn't be at risk of losing that monies. But 1298, I know understand less of. It just looks like one of those, they're trying to grab whatever extra money they can and stuff it into general fund needs. But I for the other one, I think it's, again, the philosophy of we get dedicated funds and we use it to achieve our goals, whether it's wastewater treatment or recycling, and that it can't be constantly picked away. But we'll do some more research on that and see if there's, what kind of time frame there is for putting out comment. Melissa, you had a comment.
Yeah, I want to ask a couple clarifying questions. Ramsey, you had mentioned our total budget is $37 million, and there's 2 contracts that take up about a third of that. What are those 2 contracts?
these are the one you mentioned earlier, one of them, WMI, and the other one is Hawai'i Earth Recycle.
The waste management?
The waste management and Hawai'i.
What was the second one?
Hawai'i Earth Recycle. HER.
Okay. Does Hawai'i Earth Recycling, do they deal with our cardboard?
I'm sorry,
Cardboard.
that guy is still doing the landscape, and I cannot. Can you speak?
She was asking about
Hawai'i Earth.
cardboard. Cardboard is handled by business services, and they go find.
So I know a little bit about the cardboard. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure who was handling that contract. But I just wanted to respond to what Ramsey was saying earlier about changing human behavior. And sometimes to change human behavior, you have to introduce these new habits. And one thing I want to bring our attention to is what's happening with our cardboard on this island. So what's happening with our cardboard is that we collect about 1,900 tons of it per year. And that cardboard is being shipped to Taiwan. It takes 28 days for the cardboard to reach Taiwan. And every day that it takes for it to get to Taiwan, it's using 217 tons of bunker fuel. So this is what we're doing with our cardboard. And I'm bringing our attention to this because I think we need to make some changes. We really need that cardboard, actually. We need that cardboard to stay on island because we need that cardboard to compost. And in order to be more sustainable, this is part of our problem. And so I'm saying the county is doing some things that they're engaged in practices that are against our benefit. And I'm imagining, I don't know how much that contract is with Business Services Hawaii that's shipping our cardboard to Taiwan, but I'd like to know what is the cost of that? And so we have to look at how we're spending our money. I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle, is how the county is spending its money. And I'm sure that there's other examples, you know, of, I'm going to say, mismanagement of money. We don't need to be shipping our cardboard to Taiwan. We need that here. So, you know, I'm going to work on figuring out, you know, this is part of what the Composting Consortium of people is working on. You know, they're looking at all of these different pieces that are dysfunctional. And so, you know, I'm going to be bringing more information to the commission, you know, in regards to these things. But I do think it's important that we have awareness around what is happening with some of our stuff, some of our resources that we need here.
I would also like to comment that one of the items that we requested, we being me, response to didn't get addressed last meeting and also didn't get answered, at least in your written report, Ramsey, of conducting life cycle management or life cycle assessment, which is what Melissa's talking about for the cardboard. Doesn't make sense to spend more on producing global warming gases to recycle our corrugated in Taiwan. And the funding for that life cycle assessment was apparently canceled. What was the thinking and why? Ramsey?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Yeah, as far as the cardboard, definitely, it is something that you could utilize for compost as part of the composting. Unfortunately, when the contract was negotiated with Hawaii Earth Recycling, the RFP went out with the ideas to do composting, but that never came to fruition. And they end up amending the contract to exclude composting out of it, that's the reason we are going to be in discussion with them, trying to figure out, you know, we cannot continue the same status quo from just creating mulch without benefiting from the composting process that we intended to have to start with. So we're going to go back to the original intent of the contract and trying to figure a way how we're going to bring the compost back into it. You're right about getting permits for these type of facilities and composting is a nightmare. Not too many people, especially if we're going to start introducing the biosolids from the wastewater into the compost, because you have to meet the Code of Federal Regulation and you have to be permitted through the Department of Health, because there's certain requirement that anybody's going to be in that business, they have to meet certain criteria to be able to be licensed. So, and the current Hawaii and Earth Recycling, they don't have a permit to do composting, and maybe that's the reason they never did it to start with. But I'm digging deep and trying to get to the, you know, the history behind it and trying to move forward of how we're gonna transition back to compost so we don't have to, you know, take these cardboard to Asia if we could use them here and utilize them as part of the composting process. So that all is being looked into. I don't know if George or Greg on the line. Maybe George, you could add more to, you could chime in.
George is not back. We have Christian Chance. I'm going to put him on the spot.
Okay.
Ramsey, this is Melissa again. I'm just going to chime in real quick and say that there is someone that I've been made aware of, a man named Rich Flammer. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to connect with him, but he's been in contact with some of the people working on this issue, and he is a consultant who helped set up composting facilities in all kinds of municipalities in California, in Connecticut, in Mexico, in I want to say maybe Guatemala. I'm not sure. I actually looked at his webpage yesterday to learn a little bit more about him. So I have his contact information, and I'm planning on reaching out to him in the next couple of days.
Yeah, and I think that's what we look at you guys, the commission, also to also advise us, because definitely the current contract with Hawaii Earth Recycling, that was the intent for them to create a composting facility, but it never came through, and I think that's why a lot of people are frustrated. We paying that much money, but we're not getting compost out of it. So, and I rightfully so. We need to find out. We need to get into the compost, because my understanding, they came in with the idea, yeah, we're going to build these facilities, in-vessel facilities, and we're going to do this and that, and they never carried it through. So,
Well, I think that's a blessing in disguise, because that was flawed. That plan was very flawed, and we've talked about that in other meetings. But it didn't really make sense for the island, the facility that they were planning on building, and there were issues with how the organics were going to be delivered to the facility, and then how they were going to be, how the compost was going to then be dispersed, and there were all kinds of issues with that. So I think that it's good that didn't end up happening, because I think there's a much better way in which we could approach this, which is the decentralized composting system. And that's what I think someone like Rich Flammer could help us with. And also with the money aspect as well, the funding aspect.
yeah, we just need to be very careful about the procurement laws, because as a county, we can't, if we end up talking to these people, they're probably going to do them disadvantage of trying to submit an RFP on the project itself. So you're just going to be careful sometimes. I guess I could leave that to Melia to address the legal aspect of it, because sometimes you could go chase a consultant with coming in, but there'd be kind of some restricted to be able to submit an RFP on the project.
Sorry, was that a question for me?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, could the commission start kind of negotiating with consultants on kind of process and designs or ideas that potentially may go out for RFP, and would the consultant be able to submit a RFP if they were involved in the solicitation early in the game?
I would definitely advise against the commission negotiations, that they're not the negotiating power of the county. But I would say if they want to do investigation and get information, that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, procurement has very, very specific rules. And thus, if you guys spoke to certain people as representatives of the county, they would then be probably excluded from being able to procure, or to, submit proposals or bids, what may have you. So that's definitely something to be very careful with. You don't want to exclude people. We want more competition, and we want, all the proper people to be able to come to the table. So that's definitely, we need to be very aware of all those different rules. And if you guys want, between meetings, you can reach out to me, and if you have questions about who and like the parameters of contacting others.
Well, I think right now what we're dealing with for composting, and we had some information last meeting, and I think we need to have some more discussion, and maybe that's something, Melissa, we can work up an agenda item around what kind of recommendation do we formally want to make to the council and to DEM on options they should be looking at for feasibility on this island. And the distributed composting, we had some good information, but there's always a lot of devil in the details. So I think we need to just come back and outline what can we help in going forward. I don't think we want to go out and go find new contractors. That's not our job. Our job is to say, we want you to accomplish these end goals, and how you accomplish them and with whom, is the department's responsibility. But to define the goals and approaches that we want to be included in the discussion is certainly our role. So maybe that's something, Melissa, we can talk offline about, what next could we put on the agenda for next time. And we're heading towards noon, so I probably should get us back on agenda if we can. Are there other issues, timely issues, that you need input on from us, Ramsey?
And Georgina, I have a comment about the commissioner's report.
Okay.
I noticed that the chlorides down on Ali'i Drive are not offered to us in the commissioner's report this time around. I know the last time there was something of an uncomfortable discussion about those dramatically elevated chlorides. It's not my intention to have that discussion again, but I would like to have access to what the data says on your periodic testing at the plant and at the wells. So if it's not presented in the report, is there an alternative spot to go to online or otherwise to access that data?
Usually, they share it with the Department of Health. Definitely, it's accessible. The idea is there's different type of data. There's what we call process data versus, preliminary data to get an idea of how we need to process things. So the preliminary data, definitely, we cannot, because this is to kind of set up the process forward, but the one that we use for process and it goes to the Department of Health, I guess we could find a way to put it on the website for you guys to utilize. I just want to make sure that, the wastewater is a very complex biological and chemistry type of business. Some data, it may be interpreted, the interpretation of these data, not understanding the concept. And just to, to let you know that even with the chloride and the discussion we have, I know maybe you felt it was uncomfortable, but it is, for us to figure out the contributing factors. And I guess just to give you an idea, the chloride level in the seawater, it's almost 19,400 milligram per liter. So versus the 3,500 milligram per liter we found. So in the sewer. So there's a lot of different factors, a lot of different interpretation. So if you have a question, give me a call. I'll we'll go through the technical aspect of it. But I did a few numbers, and I shared them with Rick and Dr. Bennett on the chloride and in the sewer line system. And I think
Okay.
Gaffney.
Yeah, not to interrupt you, Ramsey, but very simply, if you would include me, knowing that I have an acute interest in that issue, if you would include me on those communications, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, That, I mean, you're welcome to, like I said, if you have any questions and what have you, but I think Rick did a good calculation himself, and we were working on trying to figure out that amount.
And
that's
then
going
going forward, just to be able to hit the data, just so I can have some eyes on what's happening down there, and in the interest of transparency. That's all.
Sure, definitely. And
Thank
one item that brings up, we really need to start looking at trying to get these people within the entire area there on the shoreline, trying to definitely get them connected. And the one not connected, we are working with our corporate council to start sending letters. We came up with a boilerplate letter that's it's going to be utilized to go to these people to allow them so many days to connect. If not, we're taking legal action and hopefully go through the court system. But that's definitely our goal, is to get these people hooked up to our system rather than continue their cesspools into the shoreline, straight right into the shoreline. So
Well, since you mentioned that, and that's actually something I was going to ask George about, whether it was new business or something to mention here, but there was a headline about a B&B on a Lee Drive that's in District 7, and they've been permitted by the Leeward Planning Commission to proceed, even though they're on a cesspit. I would like to make this suggestion, and I don't know if this fits into process, but I'd like our group, the EMC, to encourage the Leeward Planning Commission to become educated about cesspit alternatives. We do have a 2050 mandate to get everybody converted, whether it's sewered or private. There are private solutions to cesspits, and there's more and more every year. So there's a group, as you're well aware, based in Honolulu and led by Stuart Coleman, called VI, W-A-I. And I'd like to invite VI to give a presentation to the Leeward Planning Commission so that they can point the B&B and other situations they encounter similar to this to a solution, rather than just say, go ahead, dump your stuff in the hole in the ground right beside the ocean, and when a solution comes along, that'll be fine.
May I jump in here? This is Georgine. One of the issues, and we don't have time to do it today, but existing cesspools and septics are not DEM. And our charter is not to get involved in things that are managed by DOH.
That's a good point, Georgine.
So I'm not sure that it's something the Environmental Commission per se should be involved in. Certainly you individually can make communication with the Leeward Planning Group. Ramsey, if you've got other avenues and other ways that you're talking with them, and could do a better job than our role, but it just seems a little bit off charter for us.
yeah, my intent is always to continue communicating with the planning department. I have already mentioned it to Zindo, and we're going to set a meeting with their department and our department to discuss the possibility of the planning, how we're going to handle the sewer infrastructure within the planning and the issuance of permits. You know, to be honest with you, if a developer comes in and if we give them incentive to start putting the sewer infrastructure, then we don't have to rebuild the whole infrastructure later down the road, because their obligation to start putting the infrastructure in as they do the development. So with that question with the cesspool, maybe they need to give them incentive to hook up to the nearest sewer line and see how far is it from the nearest sewer line, and maybe come up with some financial strategy of how to fund it and start converting people now rather than wait to the 2050.
Good. It sounds like you are talking with them, and we'll address that. It was an item on your director's report and also had been commented on by Sandra Demerel. There is a statewide cesspool conversion working group that exists, and you're part of it. Lots and lots of information there, and we don't have the wherewithal, I think, to duplicate that effort. So learn about it. It's this whole fascinating part of how do we integrate across all the different planning and operations that impact the environment. But I think, Ramsey, you're kind of the lead there in trying to make sure you're connected as you need to be. But I need to move the meeting along, and future agenda items. If we have any that you want to get listed today, or you can send me email. Again, I think Melissa and I can talk about what next steps we might want to take relative to recycling. But if there are others, please do send it to me, and we'll work it into the agenda. Anybody have anything right now, Bernie?
This is Commissioner McIntosh. You can answer it now, or I guess at the next meeting. If he had a chance to look at the Waihinu transfer station and decide how they're going to handle the construction and whether it'll be open, closed, or redirected.
Is that a quick answer, Ramsey, you can give? You just wrote down that you expect work to happen this month.
I'm sorry, Ramsey had to just go to his next meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, that settles that.
But it's in the minutes.
Okay, we'll find out and track him down and get a response to you, Lee, okay? Anything else? I'll also be going through and looking at action items. We'll get that draft letter from Dee, and I think it's a good idea to send it around to everybody just to make sure we've covered the items that people are thought we were going to be doing in that letter. Otherwise, I think we'll just be coming up with ideas for later. Also, I would appreciate if you send some comments if there are things you liked or didn't like about the director's report. Like I say, it wasn't an intentional revamp. And if things are missing, let us know.
Sure. I consider it a continual work in progress. So
Great.
continual refinements and input are requested.
All right. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 28th. And I will have been 2 weeks past my second shot. So I will be okay with meeting in person, but I don't know that all of you will be. Whether we should continue on expecting we're going to do another virtual meeting in April.
This is Commissioner McIntosh. I think that would be up to county and state emergency orders on what we're allowed to do.
You may be right that that's under discussion. I'm not quite sure how they're handling these meetings. I noticed that the council is meeting in 2 places simultaneously, and so semi-virtual. How about we just let you know what the latest status is, unless somebody has absolutely no way, will I be ready to meet at the end of April. So we'll get back to you on that, but save the time.
I would just like to say, Melissa, to chime in, that COVID aside, I really like the virtual meeting. I think it's a lot more convenient for most of us. We're not having to drive, from one side of the island to another, saving our carbon footprint is smaller. More of the public can attend. So I'm kind of in favor of the virtual meeting, indefinitely.
I have to say I am too. Anybody else have a opinion?
I think it's brilliant to continue virtual meetings. Commissioner Fulton.
Commissioner McIntosh, I like the being able to use the online and not having to drive an hour and 30 minutes either direction one way. It's just, I find it easier to understand people and interject in person rather than online. So more of a problem on my end than I guess y'all, but it's all right. But I think it's harder on the public, especially for those like in my district that may not have computers and connectivity and all that. At least maybe until, I don't even know. Maybe, yeah, until they have a way that you can testify. I think it's closed right now for renovation or something, but yeah.
I well,
Go ahead, Justin.
Well, this is my last meeting as a commissioner, but I do want to say that I support and support continuing having meetings as virtual. And I also want to thank again Commissioner Fulton for helping us to get started with our first virtual meetings, like for all of 2020. And I'm excited for where all this is going.
Thank you, Justin.
Rick, did you have a opinion one way or the other?
Yeah, I prefer the virtual meetings too, because there was a huge impact from us driving back and forth across the island. And I also think that a bigger chunk of the general public, although some have trouble with access, I think a larger number of people from the general public are able to join us on virtual meetings than are able to join us for in-person meetings.
Well, it sounds like we have some consensus there. And maybe what we can come up with is at least 1 or 2 meetings together, just as a bonding exercise. Sometimes it is easier to communicate issues in person. But there are definite advantages to the virtual if we can ensure connection. And I think that's probably worldwide. They're thinking that there are some positive advantages. So the odds are good. We'll still be virtual in April, but stay tuned. Anything else anyone has to? Oh, I should make a thank you, mahalo nui loa to Justin for his participation in the Environmental Management Commission and as chair. And he lied. There is so much work to do as a chair. So thanks a lot, Justin. Any rate, it's still fun. But thank you for your efforts, and I assume you'll still sort of keep track of what we might be up to and help with Elise's transition onto the commission. And again, mahalo.
I'd like to propose we give a round of applause to Justin for his good work, for his leadership. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. We'll miss you.
Mahalo, everyone. It really has been a joy working with each of you, and I want to reemphasize that I am super proud of where the commission is going, and I have so much faith in you all as individuals and as a team, working with the department to improve the conditions for our island and people. Mahalo.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Leo.
What are you guys still doing here? Go home. Good night or good afternoon.